In our last video, we completed the visual prototype of our chatbot using HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, and we even simulated error responses as shown here. That was step number 1. Now let's move on to step number 2, building the backend proxy. And for this step, we're going to need an OpenAI API key for the AI model and a Firebase project for the backend proxy. And if you haven't done so already, please ask ChatGPT or Mr. Google. They're usually very good at those. So, first step, let's open up our console. Let's create the backend proxy. Call it backend proxy. And go to that directory. And let's initialize it. Okay, ready to proceed? Yes. And oops. Now our console interface seems to be messed up on Git Bash. So let's get another console for this purpose. Let me bring my Windows console over here. npm Firebase. It. And yes, we want to proceed. I want Firebase functions. And I want emulators as well. Now, I have already an existing project, but you can also create your own project. So let's use an existing project. And I want to use this one. And choose the language, which is TypeScript. And enforce styles, yes, we want that. And install dependencies now. Okay, so which emulator we want? We want the functions emulator. And that's it. Which port? 5001 is good. And would you like to enable the emulator UI? Yeah, sure, why not? And we'll leave this empty. And would you like to download emulators? Yes. And that's it. So let's open up our code editor. In this case, I'm using VS Code. And let me expand the screen right here and increase the fonts for you. Okay, so inside of functions directory, there's the source folder, and I have this index. Let's remove all of that for now and create our own folder for the backend proxy. So we'll call it OpenAI proxy, and that was the name. And create an index, index.ts. Okay, and let's import the functions library. Okay, and we also need the course over here, so import course. Okay, so this is for cross-origin resource sharing, and let's export the function. OpenAI proxy. Okay, GitHub Pilot is doing a great job over here, and I want the course handler. Is that correct? Origin? No, it's not quite. I'm suggesting something for me here, but I don't like it. I just code my own. So I want course origin. So make it true, and I want to call the function or the response. Okay, yep, I think this is good. I want to call it a function instead of having this entire async over here. So I want to, that's the name, okay, function name, and it will return our handler. So return OpenAI proxy handler. Okay, let's create that function. Okay, we'll take that and put our code. So first thing that we have to do is validate if it's a post. Okay, let's see what's the suggestion over here. Okay, that looks good. Let me accept that. The next step is to check if we're running locally on the emulator. Check if running locally on the emulator. Okay, and Yeah, I think this is correct. We'll accept that. If we're not running locally, we need to check if the calling domain is authorized. So let's get the origin. Okay, that seems to be correct. And let's enumerate the valid origins. Okay, this is going to be your websites that are authorized to call this backend. And it says here that if the valid origins does not include the origin, then we reject it. So I think that's good. And there's an error over here. Why is that? Because it could be undefined. So let's correct that. You can just add an empty string here to force it as such, then the error goes away. All right. So if all the validations pass, we can proceed to test the payload. Now the payload will just contain the message. Okay, so let's see if the message is included. Let's say constant message is equal to the body, not body, request body. Okay. And it's saying here, if not message, then return 400. That's a good suggestion. Okay, now let's get our OpenAI API key. All right, and it's suggesting, okay, so this is from the functions configuration, which we'll be setting up later on. So let's do that. And I want here a try catch block. Okay, and error, fine. I want to call the API from here, so let's give it a value. Constant response message. Let's call it response message. Equals await fetch blah blah blah. Almost correct, but I don't want the Da Vinci engine. So I want just the chat's completion. Okay, so that we can specify the engine. And for our payload, we'll say method is post. Yep, I think that's good. We're missing something here. We need the authorization. Okay, so let's add the authorization here. Authorization, the open API key. Okay, that's fine. And that should do it for the header. And let's add the body payload. Yes. JSON stringify. Yes. Bring it up here so that you can see it. So it's suggesting the 3.5 turbo, which is good. And all the other suggestions are acceptable as well. So we'll just take that. And because we are fetching a promise, so let's see the results with a then. Okay. And make that a JSON. And finally, let's return the data. Not quite. I want to return the full data so that you can process it on the front end. Now, why is it complaining over here? Let's fix this syntax error here. Which is this. Okay. And that should do it. Let's remove this extra curly bracket. And let's return the response. 200 response message. That seems correct. Okay. And let's just handle the error with the response of 500. Yes, that seems correct. And that should do it. So now the next step is for us to configure the API key. Now, the reason why we're doing this here is we don't want to put the API key inside the source code. We put it on an environment or configuration variable, which is detached from the source code. So let's do that. So let's open up a terminal over here. So the command is firebase function config set, and then we say OpenAI, what did we call it? OpenAI API key. And we give it a value of whatever is, whatever is your API key. All right. Actually, I don't want to call that API underscore. Let me just call it API. Let me just call it key. And that will be key over there. So just replace this with your OpenAI API key, all right? Let me just erase this. So once you've saved your API key, you can retrieve it again by saying Firebase functions config get. Sorry, it's not function. I think it should be functions. So Firebase functions config get. It's going to show you all the keys that you have saved on the environment. Okay, so the important thing is we're detaching the sensitive information from the source code and we're keeping it somewhere safe. All right, but running it locally via functions, it won't be able to access these variables. So what we need to do is save these variables into a local file so that the emulator can read them. And we do that by giving the command. Let me clear the screen first. Okay, Firebase functions config get, and we do a pipe, okay, into a file called runtime config.json. Okay, so it's going to write a file over here, there, runtime config.json, and that will contain all the different security credentials that you would need on your backend. So it's a replica of the environment variables, and it's residing here on this file. And you should never, ever include this in your source code repo. It's only here for your local runtime convenience. Okay. So with that, we're now ready to emulate the functions locally. So let's do that. The command is npm run serve. And why we're doing that is over here on package.json, you can see this serve. Okay. So instead of typing all of these things, npm run build, blah, 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 we just say npm run serve and it's going to do everything for us. Okay. So it's starting the emulator. And very shortly, we'll see the URL that we're going to require. And we have a problem here. Yes, of course. We haven't done the main index file yet. We haven't put anything here. So let's do that. Okay, so let's import what we did on the OpenAI proxy. So import all as OpenAI. Let's call it OpenAI from, not quite OpenAI, should be the proxy. Okay, that should do it. And we export the function that we made. Export constant OpenAI proxy equals OpenAI proxy. That seems correct. Yep, I think that's good. And let's give it a shot again. And we have an error. Oh yes, we haven't saved the file. So let's save it. Okay, and give it another shot. Okay. And we're in business. Now, let's try and test if this actually works. And for this, we're going to need Postman. Postman is a backend developer's utility for sending API requests to their endpoints. So you can download it at postman.com and install it locally in your system. I have it over here already. So let me bring up Postman over here. And we're going to need the URL over here. So let's copy that. Bring up Postman again. And paste the URL over here. And all you have to do is send a payload on the body. And all you need is a JSON object. And on the message, you put your question. So over here, I'm asking how many islands are there in the Philippines? And take a guess. 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000? Let's find out. And let's bring the results over here. Okay. So it's saying the Philippines is an archipelago consisting of 7,641 islands. And that is during the high tide and 7,187 during low tide. That's a fun fact. Okay, so our backend is working. Now you can find the full source code on my GitHub repo, plus other goodies. And this is my GitHub repo, Florante Pascual. And our repo are shown over here. Node email SMS plus, and that's where you'll find the OpenAI proxy over here in functions, source, and OpenAI proxy. All right. So congratulations again at this point. You've just created a scalable backend solution, so you're now officially a full stack developer. So take a break, and I'll see you again on the next video.